What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. It's time now to give you my spring football top 25 poll for spring practice and also for the 2023 spring football season, or I should say the spring off-season. We're not going to give you my spring football top 25 poll, and yes, this is my own top 25 poll. It's not from online or anything like that. We're going to give you my best top 25 poll here for the spring football season. And basically how this top 25 is going to work, I'm going to give you the teams that had a really good season last year and, didn't live up to the expectations that, we didn't think they were going to be that bad, or maybe, they were good as we thought. So, but, spring football is here. Spring practices have been going on, and of course, some spring games have been scheduled. Some games already happened, but this is just based off of the teams from last year. And of course, teams that have high expectations heading into 2023. So let's get right into it here with my spring football top 25 poll. We'll start from 21 through 25. At number 25, I have Ole Miss here at number 25. This is a team that, was kind of quiet last year in the SEC. I mean, of course, they kind of choked there down the stretch. This is an Ole Miss team coming off an 8-5 season last year. I think this team will be a lot better. It's going to be really coming down to that defense, and also Jackson Dart returns at quarterback. And also, we know that, all these returning productions now that are coming into 2023, some of them we don't really know about, but Ole Miss, I think, is a top 25 team still heading into this season. If, they can get that defense going, I think this will be a really good Ole Miss team heading into 2023. We got Oklahoma here at number 24. This is an Oklahoma team that I think will be better this season than they were last year in the Big 12. Of course, it's their last year in the Big 12 before they head to the SEC in 2024. So I think, with Dylan Gabriel coming back, I think that will be a huge thing for this Oklahoma team. This is a team that's coming off a 6-7 record from last year. I think they will be better. And they got Texas Tech here at number 23. The reason why I have Texas Tech ahead of Oklahoma is because, from where they were from last year. Texas Tech was a decent team. And also, Texas Tech defeated Ole Miss in the bowl game. That's why I got ahead of them as well. I think this will be a good Texas Tech team this year. I'm kind of expecting them to be a, dark horse contender in the Big 12 this season. And that's how they landed at number 23 here on this top 25. Tulane at number 22, probably one of the highest group of 5 teams heading into this year. A lot of production coming back for this team. They do have to play Ole Miss on the schedule out of the non-conference. That will be a tough one there. But the good news is they get that game at home. Tulane, obviously, after that win against USC in the New Year's Six Bowl, this team has now headed in the right direction, and also they've turned this team around. And they should be one of the top group of 5 teams heading into this season. That's how they ended up in the top 25 poll for my spring football season. Wisconsin comes in at number 21, a team that, is getting a lot of hype coming into this year. And I do like this Wisconsin team a lot. I'm not really too hyped up for them, though. That's how they ended up here at 21 through 25. I think this, team will turn it around here with Luke Fickell as the head coach. They probably will have a chance to win the Big Ten West this season, but there are other teams out there that really have a shot to win the Big Ten West. You got Purdue, you got Iowa. I think the Big Ten West, though, is really wide open every single year, and that's why it's so hard, to predict that, division and also project against it. So I think Wisconsin will be a top 25 team, perhaps, not this season, not in the preseason or anything like that, but in my spring football, they're getting a lot of hype, so that's why they ended up here at number 21. Moving on to 16 through 20, UCLA at number 20. This is a team that has a lot of production coming back, including their starting quarterback from last year. They were a Pac-12 contender, championship contender last year. Could they be that same team once again? They had one of the easiest schedules last year. This schedule, this year's schedule is kind of a little bit tougher than it was last year, but I think this UCLA team will have a really good shot to still be that Pac-12 contender. North Carolina's at number 19, a team that returns, Drake May at quarterback, potentially a Heisman Trophy candidate this season. I think North Carolina is going to be a team that, you don't want to sleep on heading into 2023. I know they finished the season really not that strong last year. They, lost to, their last 2 games of the regular season, lost the ACC title game to Clemson. That's a game they probably could have won. and then they lost their bowl game to Oregon. So North Carolina did have a pretty up and down season, but I think this is still a top 25 team heading into this season. Texas at number 18, a lot of hype coming in for this team. I'm not really, sold on them here in the top 15. I think they're still maybe, a little bit off of the top 15, but in the preseason, I think they're going to put Texas in the top 15. This team has a lot of hype coming into this year, of course, with Arch Manning and, Quinn Ewers back at quarterback. The quarterback competition is going to be really crazy for this Texas team. This is a team that, is coming off an 8-win season last year. They weren't really, they were just decent. They weren't that, great of a team. But I think this year it could be a 10-win season. You never know for Texas. But as of right now, I got them at number 18 in my spring football poll. I think, it's going to take a little time for this Texas team to start where they, heading in the right direction. But maybe this is their year. Maybe this is their year they finally win the Big 12 before heading to the SEC next year with Oklahoma. Kansas State at number 17, winners of the Big 12 from a year ago. This is a team that, does lose quite a lot of talent from last year, but I think they still should overall be that good in the Big 12. So I'm going to put them at number 17 here in my spring football poll. Oregon State at number 16, another surprise team from last year. Oregon State now has DJ Ogilvie coming in as the transfer from Clemson. I think this will be a good Oregon State team. I think they'll probably be a mid-tier contender in the Pac-12 and also maybe a dark horse contender because if you think about it, you had so many Pac-12 teams, with a chance to make the Pac-12 championship. Of course, it was Utah and USC that won it, or actually got into that championship game. But, Oregon State is a team that you don't want to sleep on. I mean, if DJ Ogilvie can stay consistent for this Oregon team, I think this Oregon State, like I said, Oregon State could be a really good team heading into 2023. So hopefully DJ Ogilvie will really stay consistent. I don't know if their spring game happened just yet, so we'll see how it plays out for this Oregon State team. But I got them at number 16. Moving on 11 through 15 now, Utah at number 15. This is a team that won it all last year in the Pac-12. Utah with Cam Rising coming back at quarterback. And when you look at the Pac-12 this year, they return a lot of their starting quarterbacks this season. And Cam Rising does have the experience. He could be a Heisman candidate this season. And, from where he's been now in the last couple years, he's had ups and downs. Of course, he got injured in the Rose Bowl in back-to-back years, and now this season is no exception. I think he's going to have to really bring it to the table for this Utah team. But this is a veteran Utah team. I'm kind of expecting them to have maybe a chance here. This is a team that, I thought would make the playoff last year. I think, this season, it's going to be a little bit different for them. I think this still will be a really great team for this season. Notre Dame comes in at number 14. A lot of hype for this team as well coming into this year. However, they're not a top 10 team in my opinion. I think this will be a good team, but I'm not saying they're going to be like a college football playoff type team. Because if you look at the schedule, they do have to play Ohio State out of the non-conference, and that will be a tough one there. And then, of course, they have to play, USC on the schedule and also Clemson. I mean, the schedule is overall pretty tough for Notre Dame, but you got a quarterback coming in with a lot of, experience, and that's Sam Hartman from Wake Forest. This is a team that, is getting a lot of hype heading into this year. But I don't think Notre Dame is quite there as a playoff contender just yet. But, once we get into the later part of the offseason, we'll start to know more about this team. TCU at number 13. I'm still kind of hyped for this team after, getting to the Big 12 championship. And like I said, this top 25 is just based off of where the teams were from last year. I still believe TCU will still be a contender for the Big 12 championship, perhaps. I think this team, is going to take a step back this year. I don't think they're going to go undefeated, but I think they do have a big chance to maybe win 8 or 9 games heading into this season. So, yeah, you don't want to sleep on TCU still, heading into this season. But this is spring football. They could probably take a step back year. But this is just based off of where the teams were from last year. Clemson at number 12. This is a team that, has been up and down as a program now for the last couple seasons. There hasn't been that same kind of guy that has been like Trevor Lawrence, and also, it's just about the offense. The offense has just not been good in the last couple years, ever since Trevor Lawrence left. And, the defense, they've been solid, but, they just can't seem to stop, teams on the offensive side of the ball. But, Clemson, they've been just so inconsistent now the last couple years. I mean, this year is no exception. If Clemson doesn't get these things turned around, they're going to really have a hard time, recruiting as well. I mean, they're not really in the top 10 in recruiting anymore like they used to. So Clemson now heading into this season with a lot of emotion and also a lot of expectations. Caleb Klubnik at quarterback, how good will he be at quarterback for this Clemson team? It's just been an up and down year for this Clemson team. But number 11 is Oregon, a team that returns Bo Nix at quarterback. I'm kind of expecting Oregon to be, maybe a playoff contender heading into next year. But it's really hard to tell what Oregon's going to do as well, because the Pac-12 every single year is really crazy. It was crazy last year. Oregon had a chance to make the Pac-12 championship before losing, of course, to Oregon State at the last, season. So Oregon, obviously, I'm kind of expecting them to be a really good team this year. I'm kind of expecting Bo Nix to be a Heisman candidate as well. So that's how they ended up at number 11 in my spring football top 25. All right, to the top 10 now. We'll start from 6 through 10. We got Washington at number 10. This is a team with a lot of production coming back. I mean, this Washington team, I think, is probably, one of my favorites to win the Pac-12 next year as of right now. Because if you look at the production they have coming back, they have a lot coming back on offense. The defense is a lot coming back. And they do return their starting quarterback from last year. So Washington, with definitely high expectations, they do have to play Michigan State on the schedule out of the Big Ten. But the good news is, they don't get that game on, at home. But they do get that game on the road. But, I think Washington is capable of, winning that game. Michigan State wasn't that good of a team last year. But, this is how Washington ended up in my top 10. It's just because of the returning production they have coming back. They could be higher. They could be like in the top 5 right now. But, Washington was a 10-win team from last year. And also they kind of, missed out on the Pac-12 championship. But, this team has a lot of expectations heading into this season. I'm not too concerned about this team whatsoever. Number 9 is Tennessee. Tennessee, obviously, I'm not too concerned about the offense for the Volunteers heading into this season. It's going to be different, though. Hendon Hooker's gone. Jalen Hyatt's gone. Cedric Tillman gone. And they do lose plenty of weapons on the defensive side of the ball. They do lose Byron Young also at the defensive back position. But like I said, I'm not too concerned about Tennessee's offense heading into this year. I'm not too concerned about Joe Milton either. I'm kind of concerned, though, about that defense for Tennessee. If they can get good defensive play and also if they can get that defense going, this program is heading in the right direction. I mean, this is a team coming off an 11-win season last year. They were one of the most explosive offenses in the country. They have a chance to do that again this year. But this is spring football. We just don't know how good this Tennessee team will be. And obviously, all these top 25 teams you're seeing, we're going to see, how good they will be in spring football. We don't really know how good they're going to be in the regular season. So Tennessee, though, ends up at number 9. LSU at number 8. This is a team that went to the SEC championship last year. They do return Jalen Daniels at quarterback. This will be a pretty good LSU team. I'm kind of expecting them, to be a really good team this year and possibly be one of those SEC West contenders. The SEC West is always pretty much wide open now these days. Of course, it's not Alabama being the top team anymore. It's obviously Georgia, but LSU, though, I think has what it takes to run the table this year. This could be a playoff team as well, but it just comes down to that schedule for LSU. They do have to play Florida State out of the non-conference. That game will be in Orlando. They do have to play them in the first game of the year. Speaking of Florida State, the Seminoles come in here at number 7. A lot of hype for this team coming into this year. Of course, Mike Norvell has really changed this program. Florida State has recruited well. They also have, just bring back a lot of guys. They also done a really good job in the transfer portal. You got Jordan Travis coming back at quarterback, potentially a Heisman candidate this year. But I think, fans are kind of overrating this team, kind of the same way I'm doing it. This is spring football, though. I mean, maybe they're overrated heading into this season, but this is a team that just has a lot of hype coming into this year. That's how they ended up here in the top 10. USC at number 6. I'm not really too concerned about the offense. It's kind of similar to Tennessee, but I'm concerned about, the defense for USC. And they're both kind of similar. If they can get both, good defensive teams heading into this season. These are two dangerous teams heading into this year. But for USC, this is a team that, kind of had a rough, end of the season. Of course, losing the Pac-12 championship, and then, of course, losing to Tulane in that New Year's Six Bowl. But you bring back Caleb Williams at quarterback. I mean, that's obviously the biggest news there for USC. So I'm not really too concerned about what he does. And, of course, I'm not really too concerned about this offense for this USC team. All right, let's go to the top 5 now. Top 5 here, Penn State at number 5. I really like what this Penn State team did from last year. Probably one of the best 10-2 finishing teams from a year ago, and they were obviously one of the best 10-win teams from a year ago as well. Penn State with a lot of hype coming into this year. I think they are calling them a playoff contender. However, they could be overrated. You never know heading into this season. Maybe they don't live up to those expectations, but based off of where this team was from last year, I'm going to put them here at number 5. I do like this Nittany Lions team. I think they will be, once again, a really good team, maybe a Big Ten East contender. But the bad news is they do have to play Michigan and Ohio State every single year. So if they can beat them, Penn State has what it takes to be a playoff contender heading into 2023. But this is spring football. It's still early to tell. Alabama comes in at number 4. A lot to replace for this team. But they can rebuild. I mean, Alabama's got the talent. They have a talented team every single year. But it's just really going to be about how they play on the road this season. I mean, Alabama really struggled on the road last season, but they do get most of their games that they played on the road from last year. They get those games at home. They do play Texas out of the non-conference. They'll get that game at home. But again, Alabama had a pretty tough time on the road last year, and this is kind of like a rebuild mode for this Alabama team, and this is also kind of a redemption year for this Alabama team as well, because they haven't been the top SEC program now for the last couple years. It seems like Georgia's now taking over at that spot, and Alabama, I think is going to have to really rebuild this season. Of course, you lose Bryce Young and Will Anderson, both from the NFL draft. I think this Alabama team, still has talent, on both sides of the ball. But, they do have they lose a lot of production from last year. They only return about 40% of their production on both sides of the ball from last year as well. Ohio State comes in at number 3. A team that, made the playoff last year, but this is a team that has a lot of question marks heading to this year. The schedule overall is pretty tough for Ohio State. They do have to play Notre Dame out of the non-conference, and they do have to go on the road in that game. So, yeah, that would be a tough non-conference game there, and they do open up with Indiana there in the beginning of the season. So, it's not going to be an easy season for Ohio State. I do kind of concerned, I kind of am concerned about offensively for Ohio State. They lose, C.J. Stroud at quarterback. And who's going to be that next guy? Who's going to be that next Ohio State quarterback that takes over and really runs the table? And if you look at Ohio State now the last couple years, they have just not been able to win the Big Ten East. And, of course, that's their opponent right here. That's Michigan at number 2. Michigan comes in at number 2, a team that has a lot of production coming back this season. And, you look at what Jim Harbaugh has done now for the last couple years for this Michigan team. He has really turned this program around. They've now won the Big Ten East now the last couple years. And this team has now been to the playoff for the last couple years. But they did lose the semifinal games to TCU and, of course, to Georgia the following year. So Michigan, obviously, with high expectations once again for Jim Harbaugh. I think this is probably one of the favorites, to win the Big Ten once again this season. But don't sleep on Ohio State. Don't really sleep on Ohio State or Penn State here. These are your top 3 teams in the Big Ten East this season. And I think Michigan, though, is really the better program out of these 2 teams as of right now. But, this team has a lot of production coming back, so kind of expect them to be, a really big top 5 team and also, once again, a playoff contender. And then, obviously, Georgia comes in at number 1. No question about it. Back-to-back national championships. Could they three-peat this season? They do have to replace Stetson Bennett at quarterback, but they do have talent on both sides of the ball. It's no telling, how good Georgia will be. But, this team will be, ready to go, and also they will rebuild. They got really a lot of talented players on this team, and also the talent is there for them. Like I said, on both sides of the ball. You do lose talented people, though, like Jalen Carter, and you also lose Stetson Bennett, just like I mentioned. But I think this Georgia team really is capable of running the table once again in the SEC this season. And also they are one of the top SEC programs also heading into 2023. But Georgia comes in at number 1 for my spring football top 25. That's my spring football top 25 for the spring offseason so far. There were other teams on this list that I thought about putting in, like Duke, for example. They do have a lot of production coming back. I probably should have put them in here, but this is also just based off of where the teams were from last year and all the expectations that are heading into this season. And then, of course, I probably would put South Carolina as well on this top 25 because they did finish in the top 25 a year ago. I think that team is kind of, going to be up and down this year. So that's my spring football top 25 poll. Let me guys know what you think about this top 25 poll for spring football season. And stay tuned here for more sports content on the Lucas Ross Sports Channel.